Okay, well, hello everybody and welcome to today's special edition Zeitgeist seminar, our roundtable discussion on the public role of historians in 21st century Germany. I thought I'd briefly start by saying something very, very brief about how the idea for this seminar came about. It kind of occurred to us that in many of our Zeitgeist seminars to date, we've touched directly or indirectly on confrontations with different German pasts, which serve as key points of reference in discussions that pertain to the 21st century. And with this in mind, and given the prominence that historians have traditionally had in German public discourse, we thought it important to explore what roles historians, as professional experts on those pasts, play in Germany today. And I'm delighted to welcome 4 very eminent historians today who have found time in their very busy schedules to take part in our discussion. And I'll now introduce them in alphabetical order, so no preference in any way. To my right is Professor Eckert Conze, who is Professor of Modern History at the Philipps-Universität Marburg. I had a bit of a problem deciding what the difference between Neuere Geschichte and Neueste Geschichte is, so I'm just saying modern.
Very modern.
Yeah. Professor Conze studied in Erlangen, Bonn, Cologne and at the LSE before completing his PhD and his Habilitation in Tübingen. He spent several periods abroad as guest professor, including in Toronto, Bologna, at the German Historical Institute in London and at the University of Cambridge. And he's published widely on various aspects of German, European and international history of the 19th and 20th centuries, and also on the role of history in the present. And I thought I'd point out one publication that he's edited together with Professor Zabro called Geschichte ist immer Gegenwart, and also and also on history between Wissenschaft and Politik. And something else that's very important to mention is that between 2005 and 2010, Professor Conze chaired an independent commission of historians which investigated the history of the German Foreign Office in the era of National Socialism and the Federal Republic, which was an investigation originally commissioned by Joschka Fischer in his capacity as German Foreign Minister. Then 3 chairs to my right is Professor Mary Fulbrook, who is Professor of German History at University College London. She studied at Newnham College, Cambridge, and then at Harvard, where she gained her MA and her PhD. Her research and numerous resulting publications have ranged across a variety of fields, including religion and society in early modern Europe, the German dictatorships of the 20th century, Europe after the Holocaust, and also on the role of history, historiography, and historians in German national identity. She's currently chair of the Modern History section of the British Academy and was the first female chair of the German History Society and joint founding editor of its journal German History. At the end of our row is Professor Andreas Gestrich, who is director of the German Historical Institute in London, which is part of an umbrella organisation which can be roughly translated as German Humanities Institutes Abroad. He studied at the Freie Universität in Berlin and then Tübingen, where he also received his PhD and then completed his Habilitation at Stuttgart University. Before he came to London, he was Professor of Modern History at the University of Trier. Professor Gestrich has published extensively on all of his main research interests, which lie in the history of family, childhood and youth, the history of poverty and poor relief, media history and the social history of religious groups, and has written articles on history and the public sphere. And last but not least, Professor Martin Zabro, who is Professor of Modern History, and that's Neueste Geschichte, at the Humboldt-Universität, even newer.
Post-contemporary.
And is also director of the Center for Contemporary Historical Research in Potsdam, which is a member institute of the Leibniz Gemeinschaft. Professor Zabro studied in Kiel and Marburg and received his PhD from the University of Freiburg, and he completed his Habilitation at the Freie Universität in Berlin. He's also had periods abroad in Paris, London and Bologna. His broad research interests lie in political and cultural history, the history of dictatorship, the history of historiography and memory, and he's published extensively in all of these areas with particular emphases on the Weimar Republic, the GDR and the role of and controversies in contemporary history, as I mentioned the joint publication before. And also very important to mention is that Professor Zabgul chaired an expert commission in 2005-2006 that developed a concept for researching the SED dictatorship, which was commissioned by the federal government. And I realised when I was preparing this that I probably could have filled the first 30 minutes by saying lots of things about our guests, but I thought I would leave it at that for now. And before we get going, I just wanted to give a bit of an outline of the structure or the format that we've envisaged, given that today's a bit different to our normal Zeitgeist seminars. I've asked our participants to give a brief response to 2 questions which I sent them at the beginning, which are, firstly, what is your understanding of the public role of the historian in 21st century Germany? And secondly, how does academic historical research relate to public history? So each of our speakers will respond to those questions for 2 or 3 minutes or so, and then we'll discuss amongst the panel. And then I thought I would open the panel up for discussion to the audience and see how things go from there. But we've also got a list of a number of other questions and points that we would like to touch on, which I will endeavour to steer the discussion towards as and when appropriate. But by all means, please, once I give the okay, then your questions and your comments are very, very welcome. The idea is that this is a discussion.